What's good everyone? Today we got the review of the Panasonic S5, by far the best value full frame mirrorless camera. That's a hefty statement, but we'll show you why today. This is probably one of the very few non-sponsored videos. No one sent me this camera. I went to the shops, I bought this, $3,000 down the drain, but hopefully it's worth it and I'll try and show you why. We're going to do more of a real world test, considering that there's 100 videos out there showing all the specs and whatnot. I'll show maybe a few important specs on the screen over here, but we're going to go through real world examples. First of all, a promo video. So that was a quick little promo video that I shoot on TikTok. Go follow my TikTok. What I noticed with the S5, so currently I'm shooting on the GH5, so I am a bit of a Panasonic user, and the big reason for that is because I shoot basically 9% of everything handheld. I just can't be bothered using gimbals. I like going out adventuring and whatnot. I just don't have time to set things up. I'd rather just be more run and gun. So the reason why I stuck with S5 is the first thing is the IBIS. The IBIS was pretty solid. Obviously it's not as good as the GH5, but from my own perspective, this has to have the best S5 in the full frame camera. And there's no doubt about that. It's better than A7S3, which is a $5,000 camera. So with IBIS you're going good. Obviously not as good as the GH5, but if you look at the video I just showed you, it's all handheld, so pretty decent. Also just looking at the colors, I think the colors look great. The low light performance is a lot better compared to using GH5. I was using higher ISOs, no worries. Something really underrated about the S5 is that when you film vertical, it actually comes out straight out the computer or the file as vertical video. You don't have to rotate every single video you record using the S5. So let's just quickly jump into another example. Alright guys, this is a real world test of the Panasonic S5. We'll also check out the photos and the stills for this type of purpose, like travel videography. That was that little travel videography clip. Again, half of it was using 4K 60. It just really helps, especially if you're shooting handheld, to get that 60 frames per second so you can slow things down, stabilize them better. The only complaint is, if you're actually shooting landscapes or in nature, getting cropped 1.5 times isn't most ideal for certain situations, especially if you're on maybe like a tight cave where there's not much space to operate. Really quickly, 20 to 60, it's kind of a shame that, you know, it's 3.5 to 5.6 aperture, which at the long end doesn't deliver as much bokeh as you'd like, to be honest. But again, it costs like $300 more with the lens, even in Australia, which is really cheap. So yeah, overall with travel videography, I think this is an amazing camera. Getting that full frame sensor is so much of an advantage compared to the GH5. So in terms of videography, this definitely works great for travel videography and I'd highly recommend it. So now just quickly talking about stills, I've taken a bunch of stills on this camera. Coming to this full frame sensor, 24 megapixels. The dynamic range is very, very on point, and you can almost these days just expose however you want and the camera will be able to save you. That's something that's really helped me. I haven't had a single photo screw up because I underexposed it. On the GH5 I kind of did that about 20% of the time, because sometimes I just want to preserve the highlights and then the shadows get ruined and they look purple and it looks horrible. So just having that dynamic range there, the stills, is a huge improvement. I guess to address the elephant in the room, the autofocus. Compared to GH5, this is miles better. Using the 20 to 60 native lens, it does definitely a good job. It picks up focus a lot more easier. If you just have a decent pace, like you can definitely track things. Tracking people who are running really fast close to my camera isn't something that I really need. Obviously, if you need that capability, you should probably think elsewhere, but for honestly 90%, maybe 80% of people, the autofocus shouldn't be a problem for you. So let's just talk about the whole value sentiment. This is definitely by far the best value full frame camera, and this is basically why. So with the body and the lens, if you just catch this a little bit on special, or honestly in Australia now, about like 9% of the time it goes for around this price. This is about 3,000 Australian dollars, and there's nothing that comes close that it can basically match the capabilities of this camera that is for $3,000. Even today, the A7 Mark III, the A7 III from Sony, the body is still like $2,000. And if you buy a lens, it's basically coming up to $3,000 as well. This thing stomps on the A7 III. And just a bit of a pet peeve for the A7 III for me is that if you look at the IBIS videos, although it all has IBIS, the A7 III looks like a freaking earthquake. The footage from that, if you're shooting handheld, it's not usable unless you just stand there and pan. So that's my honest thoughts on the A7 III, and this is much better value. Every other camera that is comparable to this, for example the A7S III, that's literally, you can buy 2 of these for A7S III. So that really wraps up. Body and lens, $3,000 in Australia. They didn't sponsor me, but there's nothing better than that, alright? If you can find me a better deal for this full frame camera, please comment below. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be posting a bunch more these days. Subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, you name it, and see you guys in the next one.